What's up, everyone? Welcome in to Case by Case with Peter Tragos here, Friday live, 4 o'clock. It's going to be a fun week. We are going to talk a little bit about Brian Flores. We're going to talk a little bit about the McMichaels, and then we're going to talk more about the officers in the George Floyd death and their federal trial. So those will be the main cases we focus on. And then, as always, we will get to your questions in the chat. So if you have any questions, you can throw them in the chat now or later. I'll try to search through and get to as many of them as I can in this live, like we usually do, kind of near the end. But to start, this Brian Flores story is really interesting to me. It's a fun story because it's my worlds colliding, football, sports, and law. And every day, it seems like there is more responses coming from the NFL. Stephen Ross came out with another response saying that he's a man of integrity. Both of them are pounding their chest that they're men of integrity and that they're going to cooperate fully with the NFL and that the allegations are false and he's taking personal shots at him and things like that. The more interesting response to me today came from the Giants. So the Giants say that they are very disappointed in Brian Flores' comments, and they're also obviously saying that they're false, but they're saying to prove that they're false, the text messages that Brian Flores produced from Bill Belichick were before they even did their in-person interview with Brian Dable. Before, obviously, they made their decision because they were going to do the in-person interviews of everybody before they made their decision. So while maybe they liked Brian Daboll, maybe there were connections because of the GM that they hired, they absolutely did not make their decision, and they hadn't even done all of their interviews prior to those text messages that Bill Belichick sent. They also said that Bill Belichick has nothing to do with the Giants organization. And to me, these are all very good responses. And to me, these are what make these cases so difficult, that you have to actually prove this racial discrimination. And based on a lot of the actions that we're seeing come out in some of the responses, I think it's going to be very difficult. Now, there are two different burdens of proof when we talk about the court of public opinion and the actual civil justice system and that court of law. And so far, it seems like Brian Flores and his team of lawyers have plenty of evidence and enough evidence to win in the court of public opinion, as everybody I've seen has been on their side, saying they're going to win, say the change is needed, saying he's going to win this lawsuit. But I still think there's yet to be seen if there's enough evidence to prove this case in the actual civil justice system and in the civil courts. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and see if they can make it hit that burden of proof to show that people of color are treated differently than white coaches in the league. That's what's going to be difficult for them to prove based on the allegations that are coming from some of the teams saying they did these interviews. These interviews are serious. They have notes. They have proof of it. And they did interview minorities. And the fact that at 30-something years old, Brian Flores did, in fact, get hired to be a head coach. And at even an earlier age, he was hired to be the defensive coordinator, which is one of the positions mentioned in the complaint and in the Rooney Rule for the Patriots. And he's still getting interviewed now. So again, that's going to be an interesting thing as we kind of continue on with that case. Next, the McMichaels, Gregory and Travis McMichael. They have withdrawn, at least Gregory McMichael, the dad, entered a guilty plea and then now has withdrawn it. And Travis McMichael has indicated to the court that he is not going to plead guilty to this case. He has indicated that they are going to go to trial, and that trial, I think, starts next week. So we are going to see the federal hate crimes trial for the McMichaels. And why that's interesting is we're getting indications now that there is going to be new and serious, never before seen or heard evidence of racism that the state prosecutors either chose not to present or couldn't present based on the charges that they filed in state court. It's expected, though, in this case, for it to be front and center and pretty shocking. So whether that's going to be statements they made to other people that may not have been surrounding this actual murder, but showing the depraved and racist heart and mind and reason for killing Ahmaud Arbery, we'll see what that actually looks like, because charging them with federal hate crimes makes a lot more evidence relevant than just the murder charges that came down in state court. So that's going to be very interesting. Federal court, so we're not going to get video streamed of it. Last case, I'm just going to do the little opening on, and then we'll get to the questions. The other 3 officers in the George Floyd death case, federal court, failing to render aid, depriving him of his rights. Officer Lane, I believe they didn't say, but one of the defendants has COVID. So I think they stopped it on Wednesday, and we haven't had any testimony since then. So there's a little break in the trial, but there's still a couple days and a couple things that have happened since last time we talked. Blackwell was on the stand. She was basically the training officer, the leader for Minnesota PD or Minneapolis PD. And there were multiple days that the defense lawyers crossed her. And I think they got a lot of important information out. While she said that it's common knowledge they should have rendered aid, they should have stepped in, critical decision-making model chart that they showed they should have rendered aid, and police officers in the manual that at least 2 of these defendants had, it said, you will not only be responsible for your actions, but also the actions of your partner and other officers. So that's pretty damning evidence. But on cross, and this is where it gets interesting, okay? And I want to know your thoughts in the comments about whether you think this is right or wrong, whether you think this is actually damning for law enforcement, what you think about this. So on cross, they focused on the fact that, again, they focused on excited delirium, which you can excite yourself to death, basically, and sometimes drugs can be involved. The AMA and other medical literature condemns this, but they showed a slide in the training these officers had that say excited delirium. Medical journals may condemn it, but we live in reality. And they show all these different instances of excited delirium on the streets, how law enforcement officers should react to that excited delirium, and how they're actually trained on it. There were videos and instructions of officers putting their knee on someone's back or neck. And there was very little in this training materials on the flip them up over on their side, which is what Blackwell testified and what the prosecution wants to argue is how they should have handled the situation and how they should have handled George Floyd's body. And it turns out that was actually not a main focus of the training. There was also very interesting discussions between the defense attorney and Blackwell about how Blackwell actually made Chauvin a field training officer and a supervisor, and how he actually trained Officer Kang, one of the defendants in this case, and how the manual says that your field training officer should be a role model and someone you should mimic or act like or do what they do, because they're the best of the best as far as it comes with field training officers. And also that Derek Chauvin was the supervising officer on the scene and was the most senior officer on the scene. And he was supposed to be the leader and the role model for the other officers. It's starting to feel a little bit like A Few Good Men. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen this movie, but do you remember what happened in A Few Good Men? Because basically they were saying Colonel Jessup ordered the code red, and people follow his orders or people die. So officers and people in the military follow orders of their supervisors, or people die or people get hurt. So it ended up coming out that, yes, those petty officers or the defendants did follow Colonel Jessup's order because that's what they had to do. But does anybody remember how the case actually ended? I'll wait for the comments there, and we can discuss that in the future, because it does remind me a little bit of A Few Good Men. But is that a good thing or a bad thing for these officers that are on trial? Also, it was highlighted and a little cringy in the training videos and training manuals and training presentations for the MPD, it was an us versus them mentality in the training. Officers versus suspects. And the defense attorneys also point out there was a federal investigation. Does this police department normally use excessive force? Because they're being investigated. They've been accused of it. And Blackwell was on the stand. She's a supervisor. She's trying to act like, oh, no, these officers are the couple bad apples. They're doing things wrong. And these defense lawyers are saying, no, that's not true. This police department trains their officers to act this way, tells them not to intervene with their supervisor, tells them to act like their supervisors and respect their supervisors and have an us versus them mentality and act in a certain way when you see this excited delirium that we're arguing George Floyd was going through. I think this is pretty important evidence. Not that they didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but were they just following police procedure? And is it law enforcement and the police department's fault, not these individual lawyers? Then we also heard from the medical examiner. Talked about how George Floyd died. And the interesting testimony that came here was the defense attorneys got out the fact that he has had hundreds, if not more, death threats because of a line in the autopsy report that said, the autopsy revealed no physical findings that support a diagnosis of traumatic asphyxia or strangulation. And the public pressure that came to everybody involved. And the defense attorneys made it clear that everybody involved had so much public pressure to get these convictions. Now, there was a lot of testimony also that the medical examiner did put in his report that the restraint done by Derek Chauvin did contribute to George Floyd's death. But that wasn't the main point for the cross. The main point was, yeah, but you felt a lot of public pressure in the work you did in this case, right? And I think the jury's going to understand that and the public pressure that's coming. Now, they're feeling the same public pressure, okay? And the fact that the medical examiner felt it, I'm sure the jury's realizing that we're going to get death threats too. So how is that going to affect their decision? And the last thing, I want to jump back to the McMichael case real quick that I forgot to mention, speaking of outside pressure on the jury. So Greg McMichael withdraws his guilty plea. So now he's going to trial. If any of these prospective jurors or people that get picked for the jury heard that he was going to plead guilty and say that he murdered Ahmaud Arbery and that it was because or his race was a contributing factor or the reason why he murdered him, and then he withdraws that guilty plea, if anybody on the jury read that he was ready to admit that in open court and he was ready to say that to the judge and then withdrew it, it's over. That is damning. So they're going to have to really get in to that. And did anybody hear that? Did any of these jurors hear that? That's going to be really important because they have to get everybody off that even had heard a sniff of them pleading guilty. So I think that's important, and that's kind of where we're going to end my initial breakdown of the case by case and the cases we're following this week. Pete's talked about how long Elizabeth Holmes could go away and what prisons she could go to. We could talk a little bit about that, whether federal prison and state prison, the difference is, and is it really that cush, which applies to Holmes and to the McMichael case. Whatever you all want to talk about, we can talk about now. So get in the comments with your questions. I'm going to take a second now, ask everyone to like the video, leave your comments if you have any questions, subscribe to our page. We've talked about testing some different times for the live because some people have reached out and said other times would be better for them. Late at night time for an Eastern time zone, which is where I'm at, like 8 o'clock or something like that. So let me know in the comments if a different time would work better for you. Let me know in the chat if a different time would work better for you, and maybe we'll test some of that out because we'd like to get a consistent time that we do every week this year. So we'll talk a little bit about that. All right, let's get to some of the questions. Mira, yes, you did catch a live. Zor saying, feels like the bigger takeaway will now be paying for losing games. I'm interested to see, because I always feel this way, like with college recruiting. Will teams point the finger at other teams, or are they worried that an investigation into one team is going to turn into an investigation into all the teams, which I was interested in that whole Redskins Washington football team, Commodores, Commanders, whatever they're called now, when that John Gruden stuff came out, was there going to be a deeper probe into that? And then it just kind of went away and stuck to John Gruden and didn't hit anybody else. But I was interested if they were going to get into other teams and how much it was going to point the finger, because I'm sure the Dolphins are not the only team that's tanked for the number one pick. So how many teams are we going to do this investigation for? That's what I'm interested in. Zor, I would love to be a fly on the wall for, I think this came out when I was talking about McMichael. I agree. Kayla, thank you. Glad you're here. You can't handle the truth. Mira, in the military, we're sworn to follow lawful orders of the officers appointed over us. It's shameful if that isn't made clear to police as well. Correct. I agree with you. Easier said than done sometimes, especially if you're in a combat zone or in a high-stress situation like this, or in where you find yourself in a dangerous situation and you got to think quick on what you're going to do. You're going to rip a supervising officer off somebody. I mean, those are tough decisions. I don't think we can act like they're easy decisions. Now, should they have done something more? I think a jury is going to make that decision. And I think potentially, yes, they should have done more. At least 2 out of 3 of them. We'll see, though, what the jury decides. Zor, how can you ask that question in voir dire without letting them know he pled? You can ask questions like, did anyone follow any of the pretrial motions or hearings or things that happened in this case? Did anybody hear of any motions made by the defense in this case? Did anybody hear of any motions made by the plaintiff in this case? Did anybody think that, or has anybody followed the previous case of the defendants? And is that going to come into play here? Because they're totally separate charges. Do you understand that? Anything that the defendant said or did about these charges that make you think a certain way? So you can ask it a bunch of different ways without getting into, did you hear that they pled guilty in the case? And you've got to craft your question certain ways. And it's interesting. I also just saw in doing some research on the Lane, Kang, and Tao case that the judge did, and we talked about this, why I didn't know, because in some federal courtrooms, the judge asks all the questions. In other federal courtrooms, the judge will ask most of them, but let the lawyers follow up with some questions. Well, in that trial, the judge asked all the questions. So we'll see if that's what happens in the McMichael case, where the judge is going to ask all the questions, which could probe a little bit less into this subject, which is where I would really want to ask a lot of questions and a lot of follow-up. Yeah, a lot of evidence has come out that Lane does seem like maybe he did do more than the other 2 officers. Kayla, yeah, this is what we were thinking. We're going to test some potential weekdays, maybe 8 o'clock, 8:30, something like that. Yeah, on Monday through Thursday. To do a live a little earlier would be nice for us in Holland. Earlier my time, like noon my time or something. Be as specific as you can with your time zone, and I'll do as best as I can to accommodate as many people as I can, because that's the goal, is to give as many people a chance to get into the live chat, get into the comments, so we can talk and have fun and get everybody's opinion as much as we can. If I do a late night EST, overseas folks will miss out. Don't want that. Strong, could George Floyd case end up in Supreme Court? It would have to get appealed up multiple times, multiple levels to get there. Miss B, I believe the McMichaels are going to trial because at this point, this will be the only way they see the outside world again. Not necessarily. They could still go win in federal court and still never see the outside world again. People asking about the Rinking case. I am not sure which case that is. I have not looked into it at all. Now, this Rooney Rule, what is it worth if it's only about interviewing candidates? So this has been kind of an age-old question since it came in. Is it just creating fake interviews? Are people just doing this just to check the box? You can't force I mean, I guess you could, but most people would disagree with forcing you to hire somebody just based on race. That would violate the Constitution. But forcing you to do an interview that includes a diversity of races is something that will promote giving people opportunities. And the thought is, it's because you're not giving them the opportunity. You're not allowing all minorities to come and interview, because if you did interview them, you'd realize they're more qualified. You'd want to hire them because they'd be the best for the position. So the Rooney Rule is trying to force that interview to give them the opportunity to come sell themselves and say, listen, I would be the best candidate for this job. I would do the best. I would win for you. They can convince you and then get hired and even the playing field a little bit and kind of shatter the glass ceiling. That was the thought. Now, whether or not it's working is another question. Yeah. If Mr. Flores was your client, how would you build the case other than bringing in a lot of people with the same story? That's the best way. You got to bring in the other coaches that are also feeling it the same way. The evidence he's presented at this point, I don't feel like is strong enough, just based on his story, because he rose through the ranks. You know, he got up. He was a defensive coordinator. He was a head coach. He's still being interviewed for head coach. But I would try to get other minority and black coaches that have gone through similar things or even worse things to corroborate his stories. More coverage on the Russ lawsuits. Newest one has a lot going on in it. I have not read the newest one. People saying this is a good time for them because it's PM over across the pond. Hi, Peter. Can you speak to what it means if the McMichaels were to opt for an open plea? Basically, you plead guilty and you're at the mercy of the court, and you waive a lot of appeals if you do this. Thank you, Zor. Monica saying this time is ideal. 10 p.m. in Germany, already tired. 1 hour earlier, okay. People asking about, okay, so he's the Waffle House shooter. Okay, I have heard some about this, but I don't know enough just yet to comment on it. Michael Palmer. Seems in every single issue or case, someone always inevitably plays the race card. Don't ever talk about 74% of the NBA players are black, 16% white, 2% Latino, never happy. They also talk about how 70% of the NFL players are black as well, and they kind of use that as why are more of them not coaches. I don't think it ever is going to be or has to be a direct line where you say 70% of players are black, so 70% of coaches are black. It's not really how we do things. It's about providing opportunity, I think, is what they're looking for. I think that race does play a role in a lot of aspects of our life and in America, but I agree with you. I think it gets overused sometimes, which I think then discredits the real scenario where it is real and it does need to be changed and it does need to be acknowledged. So I think that, it's like crying wolf. You can't just do it all the time. You have to do it when it is necessary. And I think that it is necessary in the Ahmaud Arbery case. But I think there are some areas where it seems like it's not as big of an issue in the case, and it's more believable that this happened when race was not an issue. And for instance, maybe the Edgecombe case, where race was an issue because the two parties were different races, but it was reasonable to think if somebody comes up to your window and punches you in the face, that you're then going to confront them, no matter what their race is. So I think that, race is probably used more than it actually is the central issue in a case, but I still think that it is a central issue in a lot of cases and issues in the judicial system. Hopefully that answers your question. And thank you for the question. Let's see here. So in Qatar, foreign companies must have a certain number of locals. They are the minority on the payroll, but that is a national issue. So if we did that here, it would be U.S. citizens. So it's not really the same thing, but I get what you're saying. There are some countries that have provisions that you have to hire certain minorities, but I think it's different because they can say that has a national protection issue, that they're protecting their citizens, forcing other companies to give their citizens jobs. A little bit different, I think. Lori Air, you're here. You grew up in Clearwater. Clearwater, best place ever. Lucia's tired. Lucia is tired too. Becca 314. It looks like you made t-shirts. Yeah, we've had these. These are our firm shirts. We're still working on the YouTube merch. Absolutely. I would love to have a logo contest. I'll talk about figuring out how to set that up. But if you have any logos, send them to us. We'll definitely do something for you prize-wise if we end up picking your logo. We're kind of struggling with what logos and what to put on the merch and what kind of stuff we're going to do. So if you have any ideas of what you guys would like, let us know, please, because we're in the process of setting that up now. Tanya, thanks for joining us. Glad you're new. I have not discussed Kimberly Kessler. I have not followed the case. So if you're new here, I am a full-time practicing personal injury and criminal defense lawyer. Most of what I do is personal injury, but I also do criminal defense. Earlier in my career, I did a lot more criminal defense, and my dad is a criminal defense giant. He comes on the show sometimes, and our other partner does kind of both civil and criminal. And we have a full caseload. I do YouTube for fun. It's really fun. I like getting in the comments. I like everybody getting their opinions and getting diversity of thought and opinion in here. And it's cool to hear both sides, every side. But I don't follow every single case that's in the media or in the news. I try to get a consensus from all of you watching to see which ones are most prevalent and most interesting to you guys. And then I focus on them and pick them. So I have not heard a lot about this one. Maybe I do based on, Waffle House shooter as opposed to the person's name. But I don't have any opinions on it right now. If enough people care, I will look into it. So Phil DeFunk, if in Travis Rinking case, if he's found not guilty due to insanity, he's still put in a state hospital. Every state has different rules, but yes, they'll go to some institution. He could get out though and then start living a normal life with some kind of supervised release, and he'll have to keep checking in and doing. We have a client who was found not guilty of murder due to insanity, and he still has to check in. He still has to hit certain requirements and prereqs and things like that. So they do follow along with them. Thank you, QS. How has the new Mac been working for you? It's amazing. I'm on it right now. I do most of my word processing on it, all of my emails, calendaring, all of my Zoom depots, everything on this that I can. But our new practice management software is not here yet. So I can't do all of my practice management stuff on here just yet because that's up in the cloud. What we have right now is server-based. So I still have to use my old computer for that. So I don't have the update review on the Mac yet. It was actually supposed to roll out February 1st was when our practice management software was supposed to roll out. We're saying there may be a month delay. So hopefully by March, I'll get the full practice management software on here and we will keep rolling forward with that. And I'll be able to say how Mac compares to PC in a real law practice and high word processing, lots of data, lots of documents going into it, how it performs compared to a PC. So hopefully we'll get that review out soon. Not that many people watched it, but the ones that did are interested and do have follow-up questions. So I probably will do something with that. A lot of people saying they want shirts, they want merchandise. Having some ideas for what could go on a shirt. We're going to do it. We are going to do it. You guys asked. We are going to do it. But we haven't done it yet. We're in the process. Hopefully, I wanted to get it out by February. Hopefully in February and before February ends, we will have the merch available to you. Tragos Stars and Tragos merch will be available as well. Okay. All right. So we're getting kind of to the bottom of the questions. If you have any more questions, get them in now. We'll probably go for 5 or 10 more minutes. But we've hit kind of all the cases that we were going to go through today. I've hit most of the questions. We've gotten some ideas in with merch. We've gotten some ideas with them potentially changing the time or testing out other times. So if there's anything else, let me know now in the comments. If you guys haven't hit like already, please do so. Next week, we've got some fun things on the docket. We're going to go through potentially a shooting case that's been on the back burner for almost 8 years here in Pasco County, right? Our next door neighbors here to Pinellas County in Florida. That's a really interesting case. We will continue to go through the Floyd Officers cases. We'll follow the McMichaels cases. We'll follow as many of these cases as we can and continue to add cases that you all are interested in, because that's what we love doing. Thank you so much, Phil, for the super chat. Yeah, we don't get as many of these as most channels because I try to answer all the questions, not just the super chat questions, which people tell me is stupid, because if you only answer the super chat questions, then people will do more super chats. But honestly, for now at least, it's just fun for me to answer as many questions as I can. So I try to get to as many questions as I possibly can. See, Elise, interesting question. Do you use mock trials for your work? For what cases are they most helpful? We do use mock trials from time to time, and usually we try to do them on some of the interesting cases. Maybe not the run-of-the-mill car accident with a spine surgery case, but maybe a different slip and fall case or different premises liability case. We've done it on criminal cases as well. And, you know, it's really fun and interesting to do them. And I've actually thought about using YouTube and this community and you guys as potentially mock jurors in a case. We'd have to do some vetting and some confidentiality and things like that. But it is something I thought about to do a focus group kind of thing with some, we could do like a drawing for people to enter. We could potentially pick you out of a group of people to be on a mock jury or a focus group, which I think would be really fun and interesting. The hard part is I would need you guys to be unbiased and not just like what I have to say. And I think I can trust you to do that based on your comments. But it doesn't help us for you to just be like, oh, Peter, we agree with you. Thank you. We'll give your client $1 million, whatever you ask for, because we trust you, because it's supposed to be people that don't know me and don't know us and don't know our clients and come in and give us their honest opinion. Like, I don't like your client. I don't believe your client. That's too much money. That's too little money. You weren't believable when you said this. That's the kind of feedback we would need. Jude Lag. If a defendant is found not guilty and they were in police custody, do they have to go back to jail to get their stuff? Or they can go home if they're found not guilty? They can go home. They can get their stuff later. Their stuff can be sent to them. Steve Shee, are you a millionaire from your law practice? That type of question, out of bounds. Usually it's not prudent to talk about money while you discuss this stuff. I like to talk about the money we have secured in verdicts and settlements, and the money we've gotten for our clients, as opposed to how much money we've gotten. Now, sometimes you can do backwards math to get there, but we have been really successful in getting millions and millions and millions of dollars for our clients and in settlements and in verdicts. So if you want to work backwards and figure out that question, but most successful lawyers cross that boundary pretty early on if they can be successful and what they're doing and the compensation they're getting for their clients. I always feel like it's out of bounds just because it's not, what is the word? It doesn't show good couth. Is that the word? To talk about how much money you make. That's how kind of I was raised, at least. So that's why I try to shy away from stuff like that, because you never know how people are going to take it. They're going to feel offended or be annoyed or feel like you're trying to brag. So I try to stay away from that. So much of our profession is being braggadocious and bragging about stuff and having huge egos. And I try so hard to shy away from that. So I don't want my answer to ever sound like that. So I try not to do it. Although there's only 100 of us here, small kind of community talking about this stuff. Thank you, Zor. Have a great weekend to you as well. Thanks for the questions. Kayla, broke college student here, but we'll for sure buy merch. Good. We're going to do the merch, I promise. And you better buy it, because we're trying to be thoughtful about it and not do it halfway. We're trying to make it fun and cool, something that I'd want to wear and that you'd also want to wear. What's your handicap? Russ, I hope you're talking about golf, okay? And my handicap right now is right around an 8. It varies anywhere between high 7s to low 9s, but right now I think it's right around an 8. You can look me up on the gin, Peter Tragos. What's the reason I started the channel? I started the channel, and the reason it's called The Lawyer You Know is because I want everyone in the world to be able to ask a lawyer questions. And it's not fair just people that I know or friends I have can text me and say, hey, is this legal? Is this legal? I just got hit. What do I do? I'm in an accident. Do I need to call law enforcement? Doctor just screwed something up on my dad. What do I do? I just got fired. Is this legal? I've got a contract I've got to sign. What should I look for? So I wanted people to be able to ask kind of generic, general questions to a lawyer, at least to be able to point them in the right direction. We also provide our website and our phone number for you to actually contact us with specific legal questions. If you get in a car accident, call me. If you need a family law lawyer, call me. And if I can't handle your case, I will find somebody that can handle your case. Tell them that you're calling so they will answer your call and hopefully not charge you for that consultation and get you some answers and some guidance, even if you don't hire them. I want to be a resource and a lawyer you know. That's why I started it. It's morphed into more than that. And I've had fun kind of breaking down cases and letting people know their rights and what their rights are in different situations. And what's interesting is instead of doing it in a boring video of here's what you should do in a car accident, here's what you can expect if your case goes to trial, instead of just doing kind of a legal video like that, I've taken real cases that you guys are interested in and try to explain what your rights are and how these cases work and how it might work for you if you ever find yourself in this situation by breaking down their cases and using those cases as examples of what could be in store for you if you or a family member were to ever go through something like that. It's kind of what it is at this point. So Phoebe, probably not. And not because I'm discriminating against them, but because the laws can be so different that I don't want to give bad advice or say something that's totally wrong in your country that's totally different than the United States. So that's probably why I would not. And in all transparency and honesty, I'm not trying to research laws in other countries. This channel has helped me become a better trial lawyer, learn more about the system, see how other lawyers do it, watch jury selection. So I'm honing my craft and my skills. So I think it's a benefit to my clients for me to investigate and go through these cases. And I don't really think it would be a benefit for them if I was looking at other countries. That's right. That's right, Zord. I want to see pictures of people on our community page wearing our merch. That would be hilarious to me. Like, I never thought this would be like a real thing, our YouTube channel. I thought it'd have like 5 views per video. Monica's buying some merch. I'm gonna track all these, right? We can save all these comments. Kayla, depends on the jurisdiction. And those cases are difficult, as I've been talking about through the Brian Flores case. They're really difficult. Send me an email. Happy to talk to you about it. Phil DeFunk, it's funny to hear you say that. And again, I don't take any offense. I agree with you. But like, this is already so much bigger than I ever expected it to be. Like, I never expected 20,000 people to subscribe to our channel. And it's really slowed down over like the last month. It's kind of more of what I expected. So hopefully we can pick it back up and keep the groundswell and the momentum going forward. But it's funny you say before the channel blows up. I'm not sure what you're expecting for this channel, but this has already surpassed my expectations for the channel. But on my strength finders and Enneagram stuff, I'm success driven more than anything else. So once you see how this works, it's an interesting kind of thing for me to continue to try to make it better and better and give you guys what you want and continue growing the channel. Yes, Leslie, I'm trying. I'm doing my best. I don't always know what works for everybody. Thank you, Kayla. Yes, we are going to do. Okay, that's good. This is good. These are the kinds of suggestions we need. Team Peter, Team Pete, and Team Big George shirts. Absolutely, we can do that. We're all on the same team, but we love if you guys support a team. Woof, 100K easily. I am with you. I like the confidence you have in us. I appreciate it. Pink Barracuda, is your firm a religious-based firm based on the ichthus, the fish symbol on your shirt? Yes, you can see that. Yes, we are. We are a Christian-based firm, which doesn't mean we only hire Christian employees. It doesn't mean that we only work for Christian clients. We have clients that believe everything you could possibly imagine. We have clients that are part of every subgroup that you can possibly imagine, every category anybody could possibly choose. We don't discriminate based on that. But the way that we work and the way that we believe is based on the Christian religion, and that's real Christian religion, maybe not the definition that you've heard or any stereotypes that you may believe on it. And I'm happy to go into that in another video potentially, but we work hard. We do everything to the best of our ability, ethical, moral. Our slogan when my dad first started the firm is we do everything ethically and morally possible to give you the best result in your case. So we're not going to be shady. We're not going to cut corners. We're not going to do anything in the shadows. We're not going to do anything under the table. The clients can ask us that, and we don't care what you believe, but we will not break those values and do things that are against what we believe as far as that goes. So yes, to answer your question, hopefully I explained it. And if anybody has follow-up questions to that, happy to answer them. 100,000 subscribers by June. I'm going to need you guys to tell your friends about it if that's going to happen, and like this video because that'll help the algorithm maybe. Gosh, Phil, you're the man. Nepotism. What do you mean by that? My dad is the managing partner here and the founding partner. I don't usually like to explain myself like this, but we do things in a way here that you compensated and promoted and things based on your production and what you do, not based on what you look like, who you know, what your religion is, anything like that. Okay, let's see anything else. But I'm sure there are plenty of people that think I only have the job that I have because of my dad. That doesn't really bother me. I'm secure in how I work and what I do. And our other partners and lawyers here are very happy having me. So I'm happy to be here. Yes, I have siblings, 2 older sisters. Playing off 8 makes you quite a good golfer. So I don't think I'm good at golf. I'm definitely getting better. I didn't start till right after law school. So I've been playing for about 8 or 9 years. And I'm the best I've ever been now, which is fun. So I didn't play as a kid, and I was always jealous of the people that played when they were a kid but it's frustrating for them because the guys that peaked in high school or college, or girls, peaked in high school and college, they're worse now. So it's frustrating for them to be an 8. And for me, it's fun to be an 8 because I'm the best I've ever been. And as I continue to get better, hopefully I'll always be the best I've ever been until I get old. I wish you'd put a digital clock there so I could find something that I see live. It's hard to find with no time shown. I'm not sure what you mean. So let me know in the comments. All right. So we're going to sign off here. Get ready for the weekend. I'm sweating in here because we had the heat on because it was cold here in Florida, and now it is hot. So we've got to cool the office down. Thank you so much, everyone that joined. This was a ton of fun. As always, I'm glad we got to so many questions. Leave your comments below. If you have any ideas about merch, please put it in the comments. It's been so much fun. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe. Tell your friends so we can get to 100K by June, as a lot of you said here in this live. I appreciate everybody being here, but that's all we've got for this week.